hello, and welcome to the First Issue Club podcast, your weekly comic book reading club that covers mostly first issues. Why first issues, do you ask? It's the most accessible, the most exciting new starting point for you to onboard into a fun and exciting new story, to support creators, support artists, and selfishly, you're going to get a little something out of it too, right? Maybe you like, thrillers. Maybe you like erotic thrillers. And hey, we've got that in comics too.
They turned erotic real quick.
This'll turn you on a little bit, man. We're all just trying to find the thing that turns us on. And comics has that for you.
It's your bag, baby.
Whatever your bag be. And this is the First Issue Club motto that we're always coming back to. Whatever your bag be
it.
Comics be it. Okay? Okay, babe?
Whatever your bag be, bag it.
Bag it and board it. Now that's
a
joke for the
real ones.
Time comic fans. We put our treasures in bags and boards.
Yeah, so they're nice and protected.
All our precious treasures. Okay, well, we're going to cover a handful of things on today's episode. Like I mentioned, first issues, but we're going to do a little bit of news before that. Not the heaviest week for first issue comic books. We're going to talk about some of these. I think we're going to cover Dead X-Men, Jill and the Killers.
Yep.
Kid Cudi's new comic, Moon Man, which is kind of like a trend in comics now, is rappers kind of having comic books. I think Kyle Higgins wrote this, right?
So Kid Cudi and Kyle Higgins worked together.
They worked together. That's the move, is someone who's been writing comics for a long time.
Yeah.
I think more or less takes someone's idea and then they put the writing credit on the rapper.
When I think this series, Moon Man, is loosely based on the concept in most of Kid Cudi's albums that he toys around with.
Okay.
So, kind of like what Coheed and Cambria did.
Yes. So for the Kid Cudi's version of that is, what if a guy hummed a lot and was kind of bummed?
And wanted to know if it was day or night.
Mm-hmm. His signature hum, I love it. I'm a huge Kid Cudi fan, to be honest.
He was great on Comedy Bang Bang.
Oh, he was so good on Comedy Bang Bang. Another nerd thing. Improv comedy podcast. Does it get nerdier?
Does it get any nerdier? I don't think so.
I don't think it does.
Unless they're playing D&D.
Any other books you read that you're going to cover today?
So I read Avengers Twilight #2.
Okay.
Just to play a little catch up and to make sure it was going in a fun direction. I can report now. It is.
It is. Okay, the first book was very buzzworthy. I know it's kind of popped up on some of the top 10 hot books list, and people are trying to it's sold out, I think, and people are trying to scrounge for copies of it. It's got a little bit of traction on eBay, so I hear.
That's weird.
I think there's a first appearance or something in the in Avengers Twilight 1. Does that not sound right?
I mean,
is it like an alternate universe thing?
It's an alternate. It's not even an alternate. It's just like a future that may happen. I don't know. It shouldn't be spec worthy. That's for sure.
Sometimes comic book collectors get a little bogged down in this thing, which comics all the time go into alternate universes and parallel futures and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, this is the first time we're seeing Captain America in future universe A, Diversion 6. And
right.
You
people are like, oh, it's worth $25.
Yeah, you put first appearance on it on eBay, and then people start spending a lot of money for it. Don't let those vultures get you.
Don't you let them.
That's why you come to First Issue Club, so you don't fall victim to the spec sellers' evil lies.
Our buddy Chris Hacker over at the Oblivion Bar Pod described it as Marvel's version of Kingdom Come, which is Alex Ross, DC's big event, that their Elseworld thing, and I felt that like that was a pretty apt description of what it is.
All right, cool.
And then I also read the DC Pride book for Black History Month that came out today.
Right on, yeah. DC's first issues this week were almost all annuals or like collected edition anthology sort of things.
Yeah.
The Wonder Woman's daughter thing, Trinity, came out this past week, and it just collected previously published stories. Those, I think the DC Pride book is similar in that it's like several shorter stories. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's actually DC Power.
DC Power, okay.
And,
it's not a Pride thing. It's
no, it's for Black History Month.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an anthology of the Black creators doing stories in the DC universe, and it was so good. It was like
rad,
phenomenal.
Now, was it the Milestone imprint, or this is just like larger DC universe? Okay,
yeah, extended DC, not just specific to Milestone.
I think the only first issues that I saw that we're not going to cover, Power Rangers Unlimited, too many Power Rangers books, not
too many Power
time.
Rangers.
Yeah,
Back in my day, there was only 5.
Yep. Now all these in-between hue Power Rangers. There's magenta Power Rangers. Get out of here. Lapis Power Rangers.
No.
Come on.
Mauve Power Ranger?
Power Rangers? No. Get out of town.
I think I saw a polka dot one once. That doesn't even count.
What'll they think of next?
I don't know.
Lilo and Stitch finally getting a comic book.
I did not know where that was going.
Issue 1 out this past week. So if you're a Disney collector, get your grubby little fingies on that.
If you're a Lilo and Stitch head,
big
get on
Stitch
out
head.
there.
All right, let's do some news, quick hits and reactions.
That's the news buzzer.
Perfect. Oh, yeah, the famous news buzzer.
Yep, it's made famous from the news.
Right, exactly right. Yeah.
Before they met Huey Lewis.
Yeah. If you're not in a city that has the news, you may not be familiar with the famous news buzzer, but it goes do 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 do.
Yep. Sometimes it's in the morning and evening, or sometimes you just have evening, but it's pretty informative.
Yeah. Well, I'll be praying for a midday, but you know we can only ask for so much from our dear sweet Lord.
And our local news team.
The news. Okay. I did want to say this was just a funny thing.
Go on.
This isn't necessarily news, but my first thing that I saw that I just like wanted to mention or discuss was that. Are you familiar with Marvel fandom? There's this website.
I'm a fan of Marvel.
There's a handful of websites that serve as like wikis or like the go-to wikis for all the like big publishers. Like there's a DC fandom, a Marvel fandom, and it's just an exhaustive list of every niche minor character and all the versions of them and their history, their first appearances, their deaths, their births, their real names, their parents, yada yada. An incredible amount of information that only the nerdiest of nerds manage and edit. One thing that I've noticed just this past week is that someone has updated all of the X-Men, every mutant to deceased. Because after the events of the Hellfire Gala, which was this recent thing. Sorry, I spilled my cup. Recent thing in Marvel Comics, if you're not following along, is the mutants on Earth were annihilated by a giant robot who is evil named Nimrod. And the idea that we know this is a temporary thing, right? That Marvel mutants aren't going to stay dead forever. But still, someone went through and updated every mutant that was killed as deceased, killed by Nimrod at the Hellfire Gala. It must have taken days.
Days. Yes.
Multiple days to go through and update this thing that's probably going to change in a month. That's how dedicated the fine folks at Marvel fandom are. So just kudos to the sticklers that are managing that site. I just thought that was really funny.
I would love to get your take on what's going to happen with the X-Men, because you're right, because the eggs are gone. The resurrection eggs are no more, right?
Yes.
There was a mass slaughter at this year's Hellfire Gala. There was portals that went to nowhere where multiple people were lost. Do you think there's going to be one big last resurrection to end out this Hickman era? And then there's going to be there's going to be no more resurrection stuff? Or how do you think they're going to handle it going forward if there's no last giant resurrection of mutants?
I'll talk about that while covering Dead X-Men number 1 later in the episode.
You tease. You tease.
I have a take, and the X-Men have a way forward, baby. I do think that over the next couple months, as I clean up this spilled beverage with a single Post-it note at a time, which is not the most
my God,
absorbent material. Hey, we don't edit these bad boys anymore, right? We're just like straight to your dome with video, and
we could literally be on fire recording these, and we would not break.
There is no getting up and getting a towel, so excuse me.
Use your shirt
as I get into my umpteenth Post-it here. I think there's a chance that they're gonna tease like maybe a few ways forward for this to happen, so maybe it's a little bit more of a surprise when it does happen and we save whoever we do save. Maybe it's not everybody. Maybe the creators of the next run, which have already kind of been announced that a new creative team is going to be helming the X-Men, and they want to kind of get back to basics. And because of that, they might say, let's maybe leave some of the more niche X-Men in the past, just because there's so many characters to manage right now that it might just be bye-bye to some of them for a while anyway. But yeah, I think there's a couple scenarios that they're setting up, and one of them is going to be the way that we bring back almost everybody. So we'll get into it later.
Yes, we will.
All right. Anything else on that? Topic number 2.
Topic number 2.
Supergirl got cast. We have a James Gunn, what would you call it? DC Initiative Supergirl. I don't know that he's directing this movie or not. I don't think the movie has a director yet, which some people are saying is odd that they've already cast Millie Alcock, who you might know as, forgive me if I'm butchering this fictional character's name, but Rhaenyra Targaryen from the House of the Dragon.
Listen, a name like that is so fictional and made up, you could pronounce it any way you want, my friend.
Sorry if I've offended any Middle Earthers out there.
I think with that though, with a superhero franchise, you want to start on the right foot. You gotta lock down your star, even if you don't have a director. Yeah, like you know what the character is going to look like. You're immediately casting that role as quick as you can nail down the actress or actor that you want.
If you have a cast and a crew, though, that aren't on the same page, and your star wasn't selected by without talking to the people running the show, maybe, you kind of worry that the thing might be doomed and done in bad spirits from the start, right?
Do we know like there's not a director?
We don't know that, and I think people are maybe suspecting that James Gunn is going to direct this one just because we haven't heard about the director and they're already moving forward with so much stuff on it.
Yeah. Oh, man, you're right. Casting Supergirl without a director set for her movie is very weird, says Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah,
The
I've read that
director should be casting the movie. Wow, okay.
I've read that a couple places.
Interesting.
Well, and I also think that there's just obviously there's a rejection to the IP led movies and all these like massive franchises and anthologies of connected universes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just read a Christopher Nolan interview where he was talking about like he's done both things, right? Like he just did a biopic on a guy who, was working in quantum physics, and it made like $1 billion.
Yeah.
If that's not like a rejection of like these superhero IP led sort of Hollywood stories, then what is? But he's also the guy who did The Dark Knight, which you could also maybe look at as the thing that was like, let's bring prestige superhero stuff to the movie theaters in full force. I feel like that was the trilogy that really, really opened the floodgates on like, man, these movies are going to make like $500 million to $1 billion when they come out. So he just had an interesting perspective on like, there's a balance between these things. Marvel's kind of doing this thing where like they're trying to find these more auteur directors, and they're getting talented up and coming people to play these parts or just like buzzworthy people like Ayo Edebiri and Steven Yeun, right? Who are both people who were cast in Thunderbolts, who both recently dropped out. And I think, maybe that's a sign of another corner of Hollywood that's kind of rejecting the superhero stuff as like a career path or like a big thing. It's like, oh, I have a conflict that I can't do this big Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. I think there was a time where the Marvel Cinematic Universe movie would have been the conflict.
A sure thing. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everything else would have been canceled because of it. And now we're seeing the other way around, where these people like aren't so willing to commit to these bigger superhero movies because they're kind of starting to flounder, or people are losing interest in them. So I don't know. It does kind of seem like a big, Warner Brothers is in charge of this thing, and they're casting the people they want, and it's not necessarily like a singular director's vision as like a standalone piece. I think that's the part of it that's making people a little worried, but we could be looking into this way too far and way too far ahead, just after the casting of, a single person without knowing all the details. But hey, that's what we do, and that's part of the fun is speculate when we're given like little morsels.
That's what makes good content, baby. If we don't create the drama, then there is no drama, and
that's
then
right.
we would be bored.
All right, let's keep moving. This is maybe I'll skip the Ultimate Black Panther thing. We know he's going to have a wife. I'll say that. And we already know who the wife is. It's kind of been like
someone put a ring on it,
going around. But yeah, I'm sure it's a vibranium ring as well.
Mm-hmm. I do have a replacement news hit for the Black Panther thing. Katie Kubert, granddaughter of Joe Kubert and niece to Adam and Andy, is now the lead editor at DC for Batman.
Really?
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
I found that interesting because she has been in the industry for a while now. She used to actually be an editor at Marvel for some of the Avengers stuff and the A-Force books, and she has already done some DC editing for like the Batgirls stuff that's going on right now.
Batgirl series was great.
Yeah, and so I was talking to some friends, and it's you don't typically look at who the editors are at these big two publishing houses, but we kind of forget that they really kind of are the captains of these big, like, cruise ships of Marvel and DC books.
Architecting the bigger pieces that are crossing over. And
yes,
stuff like
exactly, because they have these big writing summits, Marvel and DC, once or twice a year that kind of lay out the framework for where these editors want these big stories to go.
Yeah.
And so they'll be like, okay, Chip, we're doing this year, so we'd like Batman to go here at this point in time. And Chip has to go, okay, I'll get there somehow.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when a story's not good, people typically go, oh man, the writer really fucked up. And I don't know, I would say maybe 60% of the time you might be right. But sometimes if you get like an editor that just doesn't know what they're doing or like has lost the thread for their stories, like for the year,
Yep.
I mean, there's your culprit right there. If you can't wrangle all the cats, it's not the cat's fault that they got loose. Like, you're supposed to be wrangling them. So I like that she's going to be the new editor of the Batman stuff because she has already been an editor for so many amazing books and events at both Marvel and DC that it just kind of like proves that she's like that she's really good at her job and that DC might be ramping up for some Bat stuff if they hired on her to like make sure it all goes well. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Hey, some say comic book nepo baby. I say legacy of family talent.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this is a nepo baby situation. Maybe a nepo niece.
Sure.
But like people might say that just like, oh, because of the last name, like, oh, she just didn't have to work hard. She got her master's in business and art management and like fucking worked in the trenches and like did her shit. Like nepo baby, you think like a nepo baby is just like a lazy kind of like shoe-in.
Yeah, and I'll say, to be clear, I was definitely joking when I said that.
Oh yeah, totally. No. I wasn't saying you were saying that, but
to call anyone in comics a nepo baby is like, think about how much Andy Kubert was probably making money-wise at the height of his popularity.
Right.
It was like
tens of dollars.
He was working in comics when there was like hardly any money in comics. So it's, yeah, if you can give, if you can shepherd some of your family into that line of work and they're interested in it, it's like not a huge money-making endeavor by any means, right? It's
a passion.
Yeah, it's a passion.
So that was my replacement news hit for you if we weren't going to do the Black Panther stuff.
Great replacement news hit.
Whew. Glad I got in there. Glad I was brave enough to speak up.
Read Ultimate Black Panther if you want to see who T'Challa is married to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one thing I wanted to mention that we did talk about Ghost Machine last week, which is a new Jeff Johns imprint.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy covered that like anthology style book that they did that introduced a bunch of characters, had a ton of first appearances and all that good stuff. One thing I didn't know that I don't think we articulated at the show at the time is that these creators that have come on to Ghost Machines are exclusive creators, at least for the time being, which means you've got people like Jeff Johns, Jason Fabok, Gary Frank, Brian Hitch. I mean, really big names that aren't going to be writing things for Marvel or DC for at least the foreseeable future, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, at least 3 years. With the timeline that Ghost Machine displayed in the anthology thing that they came out with last week, like those guys are going to be...
It could be a few years.
Busy.
Yeah.
Like they're invested in those stories that they want to tell, and minimum 3 years they're going to be working at that.
So we'll see. Good on them. I think it's cool to see like more people doing stuff like a Skybound or like Distillery, where you're just taking like all your uber talented friends and saying, we're making all these, we're telling all these amazing stories, and we're not necessarily keeping the part of it that's the big money-making piece because Marvel owns the character or DC owns the character that we're telling these stories with. They've all cut their teeth at these big publishers, and now they're doing it themselves and creating some new characters. And hopefully this works out for everybody. I really dig the distilleries and ghost machines that are out in the world. I did want to talk about, hey, Greg and I are Kansas City natives. This is a big week for us. This past week, we got the Chiefs headed to the Super Bowl yet again. We acknowledge that we are the enemies now.
We're in our villain era.
This is very funny that it seems like this was the season that I felt the change the most. That just like the rest of America just started completely hating the Chiefs. That were like very fun for like the first couple trips to the Super Bowl, and now it's like, okay, I wanted to see the like Lamar in the Super Bowl, and I wanted to see the Lions make it to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And 49ers Chiefs was just like the biggest, like, God, this just happened 4 years ago.
Right. Well, here's what I tell those people. Every team, when they start the season, has the same goal, and it's the fucking Super Bowl. Okay? Everyone's clawing their way to get to the fucking Super Bowl. It's not our fault that your team didn't get in. It's like we just persevered and got there. Like, sorry, but not sorry.
I think you could say, though,
the script.
Hey, maybe there's something to it. I'm just saying there were 3 missed pass interference calls and a couple unsportsmanlike conduct sort of penalties that I think could have easily not been called. That completely changed the game. So if I'm a Ravens, I see and I hear the argument for Ravens fans. Given I'm born and raised in Kansas City, I'm a Chiefs fan through and through. I'm trying to be partial here.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I saw, even I can admit, was a little like, man, didn't seem like, given Lamar and the Ravens could have had a much better game. There were some pretty big missed calls and arguable calls that would have made a huge difference in like what ended up being a 1-score game.
Okay, yeah. Well,
okay.
If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas.
Hopefully you don't hold us being in Kansas City against us. After the peace offering, I just tried to make on.
After the olive branch that Mike D so strangely offered.
Hey, like, we were a city of losers for the longest time before the Royals went to the World Series and the Chiefs started ramping up again. So I get the frustration of these like smaller market teams that doesn't seem like things are going their way after.
Which is kind of why I'm going to revel in it now, you know? Because this isn't going to last long for the Chiefs. All right? Travis Kelce has to retire in a couple years. Patrick Mahomes will still be the football messiah in the next 10 years, so that's not going to change. But we will have some rebuilding years where we won't make it to the Super Bowl. So,
oh, poor us. We're going to have seasons where we don't make it to the Super Bowl. Okay. All this to say, we've got Travis Kelce comic books coming out, and we've got Taylor Swift comic books coming out. The Taylor Swift stuff is
weird. It's weird to me.
Is wild. I don't think we have anything confirmed that she's going to play Dazzler in a movie. It's all rumors.
Yes.
And up to this point, there have been like, I think I've seen 4 or 5 different variant covers of illustrators drawing Taylor Swift as Dazzler. And now there's a Taylor Swift comic out that's getting tons of covers. And it is wild that you don't need these people's permissions to have them star in some sort of comic book. That buyers are going bonkers for these things that are getting printed by the buttload. And I don't think anyway will hold like monetary value in the long haul. It's just such a weird crossover of things. It's also, to me, it seems like the Taylor Swift comic, at least you hope, is like written for like little girls and is supposed to be like an inspiring story, but it's just weird that you've got covers that are drawn for adults,
for male gaze,
to collect on like and pay out the ass for as like exclusives and collectibles is just, it's kind of bizarre for what it is.
So I
and
did
the same
find
thing
out
for a Travis Kelce comic feels like it should be for like little kids, and I'm already seeing like weird buzz on it just because they're kind of famous, buzzworthy celebrities right now. The celebrity is on comic covers thing is just like, that's one corner that baffles me of like why people go so nuts about Eminem on a comic book cover or Jay-Z
that one was
on a comic
authorized,
book
though.
cover. Yeah, still authorized or not.
Yeah.
It's just weird that people go so gaga for those things. You wonder, are those comic book fans or are those fans of the artists who are just like, oh, cool, I have something new to buy?
I think it's a Venn diagram of all of the above.
Okay.
Because, like, there will be Taylor Swift fans who want this comic. I don't know how they're going to find out about it, but if they do, they might want it. Comic book fans, spec fans, the artist who drew it fans, and then just, like, inquisitive people that don't know what it is, but maybe just pick it up on a lark.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And, like, it technically falls under the category of unauthorized biography.
Yes.
So that's how they can kind of squeak by legally with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who this is for because it doesn't make sense spec-wise, because even if you draw her as Dazzler or Deadpool, that doesn't mean anything. Like if she shows up in the movie.
Yeah.
Like that suddenly doesn't spike the price of the book. Like, oh, first cover appearance of, Taylor Swift as Dazzler. It's just like, who fucking cares? Like, that's not a real thing.
I do think there's the sentiment that like, oh my gosh, if it happens, these books are going to raise in value colossally. And I'm
sorry, Jack.
Here I am telling you that I think
you wasted your money.
That these will never be more valuable than the week you're purchasing them.
Yep.
I think the buzz is all in the anticipation. And that happens all the time with buzzworthy comics and sales and announcements that characters are going to be in movies that we think, okay, now this is going to be put more into the pop culture zeitgeist and more people are going to be familiar with and know who this character is, which is going to elevate a character like King Shark to Poison Ivy status because he's in a movie now.
Yeah.
And we're finding that they're putting so many superheroes in movies that those characters just aren't becoming the big pop culture icons that are making these books like rise colossally in value. I mean, they go up in value, and it's more of a fun thing now to say, hey, I've got the first appearance of King Shark, which used to be like a $4 book. It is probably now like a $40 book, or who knows what it is. But there were, don't pay $200 for a slabbed copy of one of these things is all I'm trying to say.
I would say the only way that the Taylor Swift Dazzler thing will make you money or makes the most sense is if it is on a Marvel cover that where like Taylor Swift knows about it and signs off on it that she gets to be depicted as Dazzler, and it's like, you know how like the World's Finest had like the Jerry Seinfeld cover or like the Paul McCartney thing. Like if you do it like that, then yeah, that's the first appearance of Taylor Swift as Dazzler on a Marvel comic. Okay? Taylor Swift drawn as Dazzler on, like, you know, pig knuckle comics isn't, like, a thing. It's not going to make you money. Like, it only makes sense if it appears on Marvel comics.
Yeah.
Full stop. Into discussion.
Well, yeah, there's those comics of, like, AOC in, like, a scantily clad superhero outfit, and it's like, what are we doing here?
It's rough. It is rough out there, folks. It's just the dumbest shit getting printed.
You know what ends up being worth a decent amount of money, like, several years later, are those movie promo covers.
Oh,
that
yeah.
have, like, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark on the cover.
Yes.
Or, an issue of Spider-Man that has a variant with Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man on the cover. Mm-hmm. People tend to, like, get nostalgic about those things and want them, when at the time those books just look like corny promotional garbage. But after time, the movies are loved, and then people get nostalgic for those things, and then the prices of those go up. So,
yeah,
I think you're right. I think if it is a Marvel thing on a major title and is a little more, like, sanctioned, not some weird independent publisher doing a trashy comic book as a cash grab, then it's a little more of, like, a fun thing to have.
Because let's be honest, it doesn't matter what is inside these books. It's the cover.
It's all the cover, right?
It's the cover.
Yep.
Same with, like, that weird Winnie the Pooh Tigger stuff.
Yeah.
Where they're dressed as, like, Marvel characters. Those could be filled with blank pages. It doesn't fucking matter. It could be like a journal. Like, that's all cover spec stuff.
I'll also say, and I think this maybe is an unpopular take, I am so not here for the, like, horror versions of these, like, sweet, loved characters that have fallen into the public domain. Like,
oh, right. Like Steamboat Willie?
Yeah, like Steamboat Willie's having a horror movie now, and there was a Winnie the Pooh horror movie. Yeah. And it's like, can't Winnie the Pooh just be a nice, sweet, cute thing? Like, does it have to, like, as soon as you get a chance to do something with it, do you have to do the most awful thing you can think of?
Yeah, like, I think that's, like, the human condition, man.
I just fucking hate that. I mean, you think about all the things that you, like, love and cherish and hold a special place in your heart, and, like, how important Calvin and Hobbes is to people. Mm-hmm. But it's like, someday Calvin and Hobbes is going to enter the public domain, and you know what? Someone's going to make a freaky porno horror movie out of it that completely violates the spirit of the thing. Yeah. It's like, I just hate it. And I know a lot of people like it, but that's just me.
I don't know if it's like a like thing or just like a perverse fascination of, like, like, people think it's like a dissection of the character and, like, a new outlet, and it's just like, no, it's just trash. It's like, it's not good or in the spirit of the character. So, like, don't try to, like, gussy it up in any way.
Okay, I think you make a good point, because I looked up Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, which was the name of this stupid horror movie they made. Mm-hmm. Guess how much it grossed worldwide? We're not just going to say a release in America. How much did it make in its worldwide release?
$10 million.
Cut that in half.
$5 million.
$5 million.
How much did it cost to make?
$100,000.
Oh, then those guys were sprinting to the bank.
Yeah, they raked it in for what this thing cost.
They could make another movie for the rest of their life and be fine.
So yeah, someone's just gonna keep doing this shit, because, like, if you can cash a $5 million or $4.9 million check based on your gross earnings of this thing, then Yeah, people are just going to go after it and make really shitty movies that people will just see from the shock value of the movie poster or the trailer.
Yep.
That being said, I think that low of a number kind of shows you that it is more of a news story than it is people actually interested in it. That's a lot less money than I thought that thing made based on how much I heard about it. So that's good. I've got more belief in people, I guess, that not a lot of us took time out of our precious day to see.
I never saw it.
A Winnie the Pooh horror movie. Okay, let's get to our comic books.
Yes.
We've filled up a half an hour talking about comic news, whining and dining you with the latest of what's going on, and the conversation's hopping and popping in your comic shop. Now, next week when you go into your comic shop, you can say, hey, you know, what about that new Supergirl? What do you guys think? We've armed you with the ability to fit right in.
Yeah.
Hey, of course, generate your own takes. You don't have to have the same opinions as us.
Yeah. Just say, hey, I heard the guys over at First Issue Club, a great comic book podcast, talking about this. What do you guys think? Put our name out there.
Sure, yeah. You're on the street team. I'm officially knighting you.
Knighting you.
as a street team First Issue Club member. So feel as long as you're, you know, not a bigot or a shithead, feel emboldened to throw our name out there.
Yeah. Bigots and shitheads, no need apply.
Okay. Let's talk comics. Do you want to talk
Moon Man?
Kid Cudi Moon Man first? Because I think maybe that's the biggest, or like one of the more talked about books this week.
Yeah, so Kid Cudi and Kyle Higgins had a new book out called Moon Man.
Can we talk about Kyle
Higgins,
Image
Comics?
We'll mention is famous for the Massive Verse, which has books like Radiant Black. He used to work on those Power Rangers books, and Radiant Black is kind of like his independent comics version of Power Rangers.
Right.
Like a more adult version of Power Rangers.
Yeah, I think he experienced a lot of success with his Power Ranger stuff, but of course, all that money went to Power Ranger stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, if I can be this good, but in my own Power Ranger universe, then Kyle Higgins gets the money.
Yeah.
And so that's where the Radiant Black stuff came from. However,
ain't that the story with all modern comic creators?
Moon Man is allegedly, as rumor has it, going to be set in the Massive Verse eventually.
Oh, I did not know that.
It is an interpretation or loosely based on the story that is told throughout Kid Cudi's discography about Moon Boy and his adventures. The story is about a team of astronauts who is trying to get to the moon, funded by a billionaire. There is an incident that happens, and for 7 minutes, they are gone. They lose radio contact. The people on the ship don't know what happened for those 7 minutes, but that's the big mystery of the book. What happened in those 7 minutes? And so they get back home to Earth. They go through all their tests and stuff to make sure that they're not sick or have any kind of weird diseases, and then they're kind of released back into the world, and they are getting popularity in book offers because they're kind of infamous now for having this kind of historically failed mission where they don't know what happened. There's a big mystery around it. Yeah. But the titular character kind of tries to reconnect with his younger brother, and it's set in Cleveland, so they're out there in Cleveland in this family house, and it's difficult for them to reconnect because the older brother basically went off to go into space and left his little brother behind, and they lost that kind of familial connection, and there's that internal struggle there for them to force a reconnection, which I think is very relatable to people that maybe go off to college and leave their little brother behind, or siblings that grow apart. So that part of the story was kind of cool to see play out.
I'll say this already sounds like 10 times more of a personal, intimate story than I expected.
Yeah,
Kid Cudi's Moon Man to be.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And then there is a commentary on kind of there's an Elon Musk character who funds the trip to the failed mission to the moon, because his son is one of the astronauts. And there is a lot of pushback from the public to this billionaire character because he's kind of, a billionaire, and billionaires are typically just evil people who are concerned about getting money. So that's how he's portrayed in the comic book. And the main character's brother is participating in one of the protests, and the brother goes to try to save him, and these weird powers start activating in the brother because fueled by an emotion. Okay. And that's where we're kind of getting this peek into what's happening to these astronauts. They may have developed or got special powers, and we're going to find out as the series goes on. The art in this was fucking wild. It was so good.
Okay, cool.
It flowed wonderfully, but there are splash pages and single pages that just ignore every rule about paneling and gutters in the best way possible, and it's just really fun to look at. And it reminds you of old Milestone, Static Shock issues of comic books.
Yeah,
and it's just very, very fun and very, very cool and very, very Kid Cudi. It's not Ray Shremmerd, Shadow Man. It's not
Yeah, that book was bad.
It's not Starboy or anything like that. This is definitely a creator who understands the comic book medium, and I don't know if that's purely Kid Cudi's love of the medium, or if that's Kyle Higgins helping decipher Kid Cudi's ramblings into a cohesive comic book story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Kid Cudi does stand out to me as a musician who's a little more in touch with the artistry and storytelling, especially kind of being in R&B, hip hop genre. It is very heavy on the feelings and emotions and some abstract storytelling, very moody stuff. So I can see him coming to the table with if you're doing a concept album,
yeah,
you're probably the guy who can tell a decent story yarn. Or yeah.
Yeah, so it's a limited series, and whether or not its involvement in the massive verse is substantial is yet to be seen. But I'm actually pretty optimistic about this book and pretty excited about where it's going to go, mostly because it isn't some uninspired quasi comic book idea that someone who's not in the know thinks what comic books should be. It's actually a really interesting story told in comic books. So it's not hyper violent, or it's not hyper heady, or really referential to the comic book medium, where it's just becomes kind of trite, and you're just this is so stupid and far removed from what comic book readers want from a comic book. Like, someone understood the assignment with this, and I think it's a perfect marriage between Kid Cudi and Kyle Higgins, to be honest.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I will say, like, I do hate when you have a celebrity writing a comic book, and it's like, you can tell that there's this thing that commonly happens wherein someone says, hey, I want it to be clear this is for adults.
Yes.
And so it is just, like, unnecessarily violent with over-the-top language that just, like, does not seem natural, just to speak down to the readers and say, like,
This is
grown-ups, right? And it's raw. And it's like, yeah, you don't need to, like, throw that in people's faces so much. Like,
yeah. And sometimes these people will come in with, like, a specific scene they want done in the comic. Like, the stories are relevant, but they're just like, I want this one scene where, like, the character's just, like, in the rain, and they finally figure it out, and they have, like, this big moment. And it's just like, okay, but what's leading up to that? And what's the purpose of this big scene? You just want, like, a fun splash page? Then, like, get it commissioned from an artist. Like, don't horn yourself into, like, a publisher and be like, hey, I want to do a comic book, but only for this one thing I want to see in a comic. Because then it just seems disingenuous.
Yeah, I think you're saying, like, cramming it all into one issue and not earning the moments.
Or just cramming random moments
into
that
something
you
that
identified
fit.
with random things.
Yeah.
Thinking it's an interesting story when really it's just kind of hot garbage.
Oh, no.
But that book is not this, so go pick up Moon Man. It's very good.
All right. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Right on. Okay, so I wanted to talk about Jill and the Killers, which is out on Oni.
Mm-hmm.
Props to you, Oni, for releasing a big double-sized first issue here, which is something I feel like I don't see from them very often, but it really left a great impact for this story being told here. This is definitely YA.
Okay.
I have fun with YA stuff.
Easy to read.
I'll admit it. Yeah, easy to read. Like
nostalgic.
Popcorn for your brain. So if you're like me, you could pick it up. If you're a younger adult or you like other YA stuff, you can pick it up. I thought it was really cool. This book is written by Olivia Cortero Briggs, a controversial figure from First Issue Club's past. Way back. You may remember a certain book that I loved and that our one-time co-host Caitlin also loved. But an old member of the Budget King and Greg Lichtig had a little bit of a problem with, which was
boy.
Mary Shelley Monster Hunter.
God damn it.
I thought that comic was phenomenal. And I think the author has another great comic on her hands.
Yeah.
This one was, like, really cool.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, that was just a fun thing for First Issue Club fans
FIC history.
that have been around for a long time. You'll probably remember that we, like, really got into it that episode about, like, period pieces and doing things with, like, historical figures and stuff like that. And
Right.
I don't know. I really liked that comic.
And to be fair, I probably should revisit that series and see if I feel the same.
So we only covered the first issue, right?
Yes.
I think I bought the rest of the series for Caitlin and gave it to her for her birthday.
Yeah,
so,
and you drew a picture on the first one.
Oh, that's right. So the first one has a silhouette of Frankenstein kind of like
in the snow.
Frankenstein's monster, excuse me.
Yeah,
in the snow or in the sky, and I filled it in with a character and wrote happy birthday on it and gave her the rest of the issues.
Yeah.
So
I threw it away.
Yeah. Oh no.
I'm kidding.
Okay, enough preface for this comic. The story goes, we follow this character Jill, and she's introduced as this high school student whose mom has disappeared. She hasn't been to high school for a while because of that, and she's wanting to go back. But in going back to high school, she's kind of having a hard time readjusting. Her friends have kind of moved on to new things and different interests, and she's like, oh shit, like it all got away from me, and during this like super traumatic thing when I really need these people in my life. She finds out that her friends are big into like murder podcasts, and they're trying to keep that from her because they're like, is this sort of violent stuff triggering for you because your mom is missing, yada yada yada. So they're trying to kind of keep her out of it, which is just worse for her. So some great like setup and teen angsty stuff and high school drama that you love to see in YA stuff as it is.
Right.
In any case, here we're getting to the crux of the story here.
Does she start her own podcast?
Our lead Jill says, okay, I'm going to buy this murder mystery game that's like a subscription box sort of thing.
Yeah, I've
to
done
like
one of those.
Get my friends like back into this and hang out with me and all that stuff. And there's this one where they like make the game specific to you, so you write in some stuff about yourself. So box shows up at the house, and it's got all these like case files and things in it, and the kids open it up and they do their murder mystery board and go and research the stuff, and there's like fun things that it's like paralleling with their high school is written into it and all this stuff. And so they're trying to solve this crime. The next day, the game comes. So we realize that
oh no,
the first box was actually supposed to go to our lead Jill's mother, who is missing, who it turns out was a detective.
Oh.
And so they were working an actual murder mystery in the town without knowing. And now they've kind of discovered, oh shit, we already have leads on this, and we thought it was a fun game, and now we're in the midst of like solving this like actual murder mystery.
I love that.
That somehow is tied to her missing mother. And you know how I said that's it's a double issue? This is like the halfway point of the issue. So you have a whole other comic worth of story and world building and character introduction. Fantastic comic book. And I think like in the spirit of First Issue Club, as like we're trying to give you cool, fun books to onboard into that are accessible and make comic books less intimidating of a hobby to like find your way in. This is a great, fun story that I think is easy to read because it's YA and it's not doing like crazy shit with paneling that makes it kind of hard to follow. And because it's YA, it's just like fun. So this is like a big recommend from me. It's like $6.99, which is kind of a higher price point for a comic book.
That's not bad though.
When you think about it, it's like really the size of 2 comic books without any ads. So like they're already big, long comic books as it is. Like huge recommend. Jill and the Killers on Oni Press. Got to pick that one up, I think.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Big time. I love where it went in the second issue too.
Okay.
Or not second issue, but the second
half.
part, half of the first issue was really cool. So I'm leaving a lot out intentionally. Just supposed to give you a tease here if you're going to read it. I don't want to spoil the whole thing. Did you want to talk about the Black History Month book?
Yeah, so I read the DC Power book that came out to celebrate Black History Month. Marvel and DC both kind of do this every February, and it highlights POC creators and characters on both publishers, and it's normally an anthology series of different stories highlighting different characters. This one is no different. It highlights like characters from Far Sector. It does Superman and a bunch of other characters in the DC universe, and I rarely ever say this, but every story in the book was a heater. Like everyone was so good and fun, and the the difference in art in each story was so refreshing. And like, I don't remember a time in an anthology where I got such diverse art each story that kind of like really led you through the book and like wanted you to encourage you to keep like flipping the pages and exploring the book. So it's difficult to go into each story individually without bogging you down and like making this episode 2 hours long. You just have to go check it out. It's so good. A lot of amazing creators on this book. John Ridley does an amazing story in the middle of it. So yeah, go check it out. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, I'll say I think there is a bit of like sometimes there's a stigma about these anthology books because they do cost more money typically, and a lot of times they're just like fun little side stories that don't necessarily like have major repercussions and bigger storylines. So a lot of people skip them because they are looked as like adjunct or bonus in addition to optional reading.
Right.
But however, things like DC Power and all of the Marvel Pride books that they do and Marvel Voices are comic books where you're featuring underrepresented creators and underrepresented voices in comics.
Yep.
And because of that, these creators are fucking bringing it.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're getting a chance to do these things. Like you said, we've got people like John Ridley who are writing like comics all the time and are like famous names.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's important that these people are the voices on these comics. But to me, one of the coolest things about it is all these people who haven't had opportunities coming to the table and getting these opportunities in these books. And you're just like, holy shit, like this person fucking brought it. And it's cool to see like next generation talent and people,
these
people
books
who
really
deserve to
are,
have their voices heard.
Yeah, absolutely. They really are just like showcases of new and maybe not so new talent that people need to be exposed to because they're these raw and up and coming creators that are just like waiting for the opportunity to be in a Marvel book or be in a DC book. And Mike D, you're absolutely right. Like they just bring fucking flames to these books of like, this is the talent I have. Like, you think I'm good in this, you know, showcase series? Put me on fucking Spider-Man. Put me on fucking like Batman. Like, then see what I can cook up. And I love them because it is like just like a mixtape of talent that you get to be exposed to, and it's so cool.
Yep. And we've said this before, but we've got 60 years of the old white guy's experience being translated into comic book form.
Right.
So when you get these different voices, it's like so fresh and
it's very refreshing.
Cool. Yeah, totally. All right. Last one I'll cover, and I'll try to do it quick, is Dead X-Men. And we did kind of tease that, like, maybe we're going to find out a little bit about where X-Men's going to go. This book, extremely inaccessible. So, this is a tie-in. It's like a 4-part tie-in to this, like, larger X-Men universe thing that is happening with the repercussions and fallout of Fall of X. So, again, you know, a couple weeks ago I was talking about how I had a lot of fun wrapping up a lot of the story arcs that have been finishing over the last month or so with all my X books. And I was like, you know, the Phalanx is a big part of it, and the Sinisters achieving Dominion, and Orbis Stellaris, and, you know, Moira clones and alternate timelines and lifelines of Moira. And it's just like, you know, unless you've been reading every single one of these X books, you're just going to, like, roll your eyes at this stuff. So, that being said, a lot of that stuff happens in this book is like a continuation of all that heady, high fantasy, but in Marvel Comics type of shit. Let me try to give you like the Cliff Notes version that is just like maybe fun to follow along with, as someone who's just like interested maybe in what's going on in X-Men if you're not reading all the books.
Yeah.
So, we've got like a special ops kind of team of mutants that were specifically resurrected by Ascani, which is like Rachel Summers' name, mutant name. And she's made this like specific task force to go find Moira, a Moira that's still alive. And these X-Men are bopping through these different sinister universes.
Oh, cool.
Or what's left of them anyway, with Rachel Summers kind of acting as this conduit that's like pushing them into alternate timelines, in order to try to track down Moira. And this team is made up of Frenzy, Jubilee, Prodigy, Dazzler, and Cannonball. And so it's like a really weird, fun mix of characters. And Prodigy's mostly there because his power is to like soak in the knowledge of those around him. He's not necessarily like a normal telepath. See, already as I'm talking through this, I'm like, this is not the easy Cliff Notes version, right? It's just like impossible to do this. But he can get close to Moira without her having her guard up for like telepaths. That he's just like, he's going to get close to her and unexpectedly her mind is going to imprint on his. And Charles is going to be able to use that to map all these lives of all the Moiras with the hopes of them sending Charles or some of the X team back to get in the way of whatever ended up happening with House and Powers, right? It's like, can we find a point early enough for Moira where we either change her trajectory in her life or maybe we kill her before her mutant powers manifest? So you're talking about like killing a child Moira at that point.
A baby Moira?
A baby Moira. The really fun thing that happens in this is that the Moira that's left over that they find in one of these universes has assembled a weapon that they're calling Weapon M. And it is mostly built out of the corpses of different mutants. So it's got all these pieces and powers and things that are going to enable her to jump back in time around her own timeline herself. So the X-Men...
So she like wear it as like a backpack or something?
No, it's like a big axe. But it's made with like, you know, some dead Wolverine adamantium and some of Omega Red.
Whoa.
And, you know, she's got the black hole powers of... I'm trying to think of that kind of horse-looking mutant. In any case, cobbled together mutant powers, and she finds kind of like the last piece to like power this thing in like one of the last panels of Dead X-Men 1. So X-Men have her and are going to be able to jump around the timeline to find the right point in time to get to Moira before all this stuff happens. And then this Moira is also going to be able to go back in time to find herself, to relive those things, to change her own future. So we're going to have some battling there. So
holy shit.
Again, really, really fun if you're all kept up on X-Men. If you're not, you're just going to be like, what the fuck am I reading?
Kind of like how I was when I read The Resurrection of Magneto.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you're not reading any of this stuff right now, like, try to do this thing where you're just like listening to podcasts where they're giving you like the Cliff Notes and just try to have fun with like the news about like what's going on, and less so like maybe don't waste your money on the comics.
Yeah, the hearing about it is better than the reading it.
Yeah, right. 'cause I think without knowing this stuff, if you read Dead X-Men, you know, you wouldn't have been able to give like an inch of a synopsis. You would have just been like, what the hell did I just read?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Still waiting for the collected edition to tackle Hickman's X-Men stuff because, ooh-wee. Got away from me quick.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be like 14 Omnis. Like, that'll never happen. It's just like way too much.
I'm ready. My body is ready.
I think, you know, you could potentially put together like Claremont era Omnis, at least for like his uncanny, like you know, couple hundred issues of Uncanny, and then maybe some like separate tie-in books to like read Excalibur and some things like that were going on or tying in, or New Mutants that were happening at the same time, which were, you know, themselves like 100 issues that like spun out once he left.
Yeah.
But the Hickman, what we're calling now the Hickman era of X-Men, just had
too much.
You know, like dozens of titles and way too much stuff to ever like really, really collect.
Yeah. Ugh. Bummer. Well, guess I'll never know about it.
Yeah, I mean, you could try on Unlimited.
I guess I could do it, Marvel Unlimited.
You could do it on Unlimited, but working out like the timeline of like when to read. Like, oh, I just read X-Men #1, so I'm gonna X-Men Volume 6 #1. So now I've got to hop to Excalibur Volume 4 #25, and then X-Corp #3. Like, sussing out that reading order now sounds like a complete nightmare.
Yeah, 100%.
And it would, like, in real time, when did House and Powers come out? Do you remember? I'll look it up real quick.
2017? 16? It's been longer than we think. I fear.
2019.
Really? 2019. Yeah. Okay.
2019.
I guess that makes sense because we went to C2E2 and it was still fresh, and that was right before COVID.
Yeah, just
premiered.
They had just announced Swords of X, or 10 of Swords, or whatever they were calling it, X of Swords.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think even if you're doing it on Unlimited, I still think it would take like 5 years.
Damn.
It's 5 years worth of weekly comic books.
Yeah. Holy shit! I didn't realize that.
So best of luck if you want to go on that journey. But I say, you know, read the synopsis somewhere and move on with your life.
Stay tuned to First Issue Club 5 years from now, where I finally finish reading it.
Finally finish it, and you can give your own review of Dead X-Men #1.
And it'll be, it was good, I guess.
It was all right.
It's kind of hard to explain.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've invested like thousands of dollars in 5 years of my life into these things, and I'm still just like, it was kind of hard to follow still.
Yeah. It was okay. It was fine. I wish I had my money back.
Ridiculous. All right, that's another episode of the First Issue Club. You're going to get the details in our outro, but just to reinforce them, we've got a Patreon if you want to get some more First Issue Club goodness. Oh, Greg's got something to interrupt me with?
No, I'll count you off.
You were counting me off. We've got a Patreon that you can join us on for about a bonus episode every week. We've got videos on YouTube. So watch us over there for free.
For free.
You can watch the video version of this. And then we're also on all the social medias. We've got a fun TikTok with fun clips from the show and stuff like that. So you can interact with Greg on all that good stuff. We've got a Discord you can join too and chat with us about comics. A fun community on there, and yada yada yada.
And it is really fun to hear from you guys about comic books that you're reading or stuff that you liked from the week. So please don't be shy. Join the Discord. Join us on Twitter. We do have a free section of the Patreon too. So like Mike D said, patreon.com/firstissueclub. Head on over there. Check it out.
And let's go, Chiefs!
Chiefs.
Bye.